Dr. Garcia, I wanted to come to one question here, just because in our conversation, we've briefly talked about burnout. And you've mentioned this is something that still exists. This is an important factor we need to talk about. And one of the questions was that how can leadership better support frontline staff to really prevent that burnout while still meeting the demand? We can't just stop working, right? We can't just stop. We need to continue working. So, how can leadership better support frontline staff to prevent burnout?
Yeah, I could answering these questions could take half an hour, because it's a very complex topic, but it really comes down to a few things. It comes down to the culture of your organization. And sometimes speaking about this topic is not easy. And you have to up manage and you have to down manage. But truly, this comes from the top of the organization. And Monique spoke about people choosing an organization with a positive culture. Part of the positive culture is addressing proactively these issues that create burnout. Now, how do you address them is all that big puzzle that you're talking about, and looking at the journey, and within the journey, what are the different initiatives that you are going to create in order to support. But one thing is true, Lucas, and I'm just going to give you the example of our engagement survey. We had a big engagement survey in both of the organizations that I work for, and we get the results. We never close the loop. We get the information, and those that gave us the information never hear back from us. So, that's one thing. The second thing is interacting with a surgeon that gave feedback. She asked me, is this feedback confidential? And I said, yes, it is confidential, but I hope that we get to the point where it doesn't have to be confidential, where we can have any sort of interaction at any time without being afraid of retaliation, right? And the third thing is that 90% of the stuff that you see, for example, in a survey is exactly what the question is about. Is the pebble on the shoe that is happening on the front line. And it's not about the big strategy. It's not about what Luis Garcia dream is. It's about my computer not working, or my keyboard, or I cannot get another patient. So one of the things that is super, super important is to get the talent all the way to the front line and allow them to execute. And people are going to make mistakes, but it is okay. Have them own their mistakes. But what you cannot do is to change something in the front line, that pebble in the shoes, for a manager or a clinician leader to have to go 4 or 5 layers above to get a yes. So it's just some of the things that speak about culture and the ability to make positive change.